The Dukes of Hazzard dress up in drag will not be seen, in order that we may bring you the following program.
Previously on Giving the Mic to the Wrong Person.
Stephen King even talked about this in some of his more like lampshady bits in his 80s novels about the lie that, for genre horror sci-fi genre entertainment for most of the 20th century as it was being developed, you always had people freaking out and not acting human.
Yeah.
Doing this stuff, whereas at some point...
it's like someone in a horror movie that just does everything that someone in a horror movie does. And
right.
It's not what you would normally do. And so it's like it's existing within the trappings of the genre without having any kind of basis in reality. We just accept that is the way that a person acts in that situation.
Right. It's people. It's plot. Plot driven characters rather than I don't know what character driven.
Character driven. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's kind of like it's like people. It's
Thank you, Aristotle. And
Yes.
with that,
yeah.
And now for the exciting conclusion to our episode.
Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a dork living in Portland, Oregon who spent too many years listening to podcasts and not doing anything creative. This is my attempt to rectify that, to create and contribute something where I talk to people about their cultural obsessions and try to give some recommendations of my own. Welcome to Giving the Mic to the Wrong Person.
And then coming back in, let's talk about Buffy some more. The show, because at some point it was also because the show becoming popular when it did, when you have like just this explosion of online writing and embryonic blogging.
mm-hmm. Like what happened was going on the internet at the same time.
Yeah,
Yes.
It was lauded as being very feminist, and that was kind of how we'd gotten his career. Basically, is like you're a man writing female-centered stories, and he's perpetuated that over the years. I'm a huge fan of his work, but I'm also a very, very strong critic of his stuff, especially now. Recently, the Wonder Woman script that he wrote in 2003 leaked, and it became the laughingstock of the internet. So I won't go into that, but let's just say that he has I watched all 7 seasons of Buffy recently, and by the end it kind of is one of those things where you wish it would have died sooner.
Yeah.
But the show itself and the way that the characters interacted with each other, and they did a lot of stuff that was groundbreaking at the time. Like, I think you guys could speak to that a lot more than I could, because I was in junior high.
Yeah, it was new.
No, it was new, but also I think for me because my thing of just the use of genre entertainment just for metaphor, because people were talking about how there was the one show where the subtext was so blatant. Well, knocked over there. The subtext was so blatant. It was barely even sub anymore. It almost being just like purely text.
It was pure text. Yeah.
Of her stuff going through is like, here being a teen girl growing up and having to go through these things, but in the form, taking the form of what, almost allegorical. This form of like, these, monsters as representing, hey, all of a sudden, what happens when your boyfriend sleeps with you and then becomes a monster?
Yeah, he loses his soul because he sleeps with you.
Yeah.
And then he ends up, torturing you and killing people that and that kind of thing. Like, but it's also sort of like, it's supposed to be like an allegory for like how relationships work and how those foibles can show up, like whether, what kind of things are abuse and not, And yeah, he went a little far with that, I would say. I'm especially with when you get into the later seasons with Spike. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the ending of that.
Well, not the end of it. It was like, but similar with Twin Peaks of like how there was almost a necessary humanization of characters, because you can't have.
If they're going to be on for like 4 seasons, you're going to eventually find their humanity in them. Yeah, even though they start out the villain, you become not the villain.
Or it changes. Yeah, it's like people. It's like real people aren't static.
Exactly.
Even in Twin Peaks, Albert, played by Miguel Ferrer, had a humanizing arc.
While I will admit to a certain cynicism, the fact is that I'm a naysayer and hatchet man in the fight against violence. I pride myself in taking a punch, and I'll gladly take another, because I choose to live my life in the company of Gandhi and King. My concerns are global. I reject absolutely revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. I love you, Sheriff Drummond.
Albert's path is a strange and difficult one.
Where he wasn't quite the prickly bastard that he was originally, and he came around to enjoying what Twin Peaks was, and how he
had that spiritual journey and enjoying
Right.
the coffee and the Doug firs.
Yeah, indeed. But also with, I still think one of the God, this would have been like a mid-season thing, but it was just like where just a pure, I don't know, pure character-based yet not dialogue-based scene of comedy was just when I think. There was the shot of at home where Spike is at Buffy's home. He's just sitting at the table with Buffy's mom, and they're not saying anything. It's just a shot of the two of them sitting at this table, slightly uncomfortable, just kind of like waiting.
Yeah.
And it holds on the shot just a little bit too long, and it just becomes hilarious.
Yeah, because her mom's a straight man in the entire, well, not the entire show, but most of the show. Mm-hmm. She plays the straight one where, she just accepts Buffy as a slayer. She doesn't give her crap for staying out late or do anything like that. She just has to live with it. And then, there's a ridiculous episode. Whenever she tries to date people, that's when you bring in the man that's not Buffy's dad that's going to cause problems. There's a really awful episode with John Ritter. It's beautiful. It's a train wreck, and it is wonderful. I will not even begin to go on.
Oh yeah,
I gotta watch that one.
Well, then it turns into Lost Boys.
It's so bad.
Where we have divorced mom.
Don't go out and date mom because you're just going to find a vampire or a robot or whatever.
Some uncanny
good out there.
Some uncanny inhuman thing. Like I said, foreign threat to family and previous relationship. Only the threat. But the threat is manifested. Because there's a term. I don't know. My lexicon is failing on me. I need more beer.
It basically is like it's taking that situation and it's dramatizing within the universe of that show. So in this context, Buffy gets really weird. There's they have all these life model decoy robots at one point where it's like this is just like the lowest of the low writing trope, like in sci-fi, right?
Yeah, hey, we
made a robot version of somebody.
Yeah, we grew up watching Stepford Wives, and we want to bring that into our show. So
well, but when you think about it, how a show like 90210 would tell a similar type of story, of a single mom, dating somebody. That's an opportunity to tell a story, and it might be actually a really similar story. That this is somebody that we don't know and we don't understand. And this is the outsider story that has been brought in.
Right.
And teen dramas allow for a lot of opportunities to do that.
Oh, always, because you don't trust them, and then you have to gain their trust, and maybe when you gain their trust, it turns out that they're not worth your trust.
Right. It's and depending on the genre level of a show, it's like when. Human monsters are also literal monsters. Trying to think if there's anything else. If there was anything.
I think one of the thing that's kind of fun about Buffy that you see in all of the most of the other teen shows, whether or not they have a supernatural bent or not, is the gang.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
the gang.
The gang.
Yeah.
Like there's the different roles that are in there. Like you've got the wise teacher. That's Giles.
The
right?
mentor figure.
The mentor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You have
the guy that previously fell in love with you when you first came to the school, but is now your best friend.
Oh yes, there's always the person who was
Xander's character, basically,
who's your best friend. And he's kind of a straight man in terms of he never gets any supernatural abilities, right?
Yep, he's the straight man throughout the entire show, and he goes into a blue collar work, and he kind of just deals with everything. He gets downloaded the brain of a soldier, like I think season 4, season 5, and so he has all this tactical knowledge now, which is ridiculous.
Well, that's convenient.
Yeah, very convenient. But he's still the everyman.
Okay, and then Willow is kind of like
the nerd.
But then
she's also the witch best friend. So the witch best friend is a huge trope. We know that well. But she's about how somebody can go from being socially awkward and isolated to being more confident in themselves, but then
because they have these special powers.
Yeah.
When you said that we know about that, I'm thinking you're talking about Vampire Diaries.
Yeah, Bonnie.
Because, Bonnie is also the witch best friend of Elena,
and she's I think she's my favorite character just because she kind of deals with things a lot more maturely than anybody else on the show.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to think of there are sort of equivalents to these characters in, like, again,
every single modern teen
90210, or even like Gossip Girl. Are you guys familiar with Gossip Girl? Not so much. Okay.
Not my era.
Really.
Or Gilmore Girls.
If you're out on the road, feeling lonely.
Gilmore Girls doesn't quite fit. A lot of people wanted to say that Gilmore Girls is different than a teen drama. That
it's a mom and teen drama.
It's a mom and teen drama, but it still has a lot of the same. It's got the wacky background characters. It's got. I mean, it's a smaller group. The group isn't as big. Like the mom kind of takes up a lot of the.
Yeah. Well, that kind of insularity is good, right?
Yeah. But let's see. Okay, just going back to 90210. So you have. So what characters have we talked about? We have the wise parents, so they're kind of the mentors, and the guy at the Peach Pit.
Oh yeah.
The guy who owns the Peach Pit is also the wise mentor. For kids, when kids can't take things to their parents, they might go talk to Nat or Nate or whatever his name is.
Yeah, a trusted adult.
Yeah, the trusted adult.
Like your principal.
The cool adult, though.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Like Giles is a rocker in the in Britain, and he's kind of punk rock. Like underneath all that, like librarian aesthetic.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and a sorcerer. So you have the person that's kind of badass. This represents what your parents aren't. You can talk to them. They're objective, but they might not give you the best advice, but they'll always give you advice.
Yeah. And with 90210, they had they didn't really have one central character. I mean, I guess the Welsh family was kind of like the central characters.
They were early on, definitely.
To that, but they have I guess Luke, what's his name? Dylan is like Brandon's. He's kind of like the outcast best friend.
The best friend that's not cool with anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. You know these tropes really well, better than I do.
That's okay. It's easy. Skins made it easy for me. That's the one I always draw back to. But because it has equal amounts of men and women, which sometimes doesn't always happen. Yeah, I mean that actually is a staple of teen drama. That's a little bit more interesting too. Is that you usually have both sexes pretty represented pretty well.
Yeah. One of the things I tell my kids over and over again when they try to get me to watch a new show, and it was one of the reasons I don't like the show Supernatural, is that there's no strong female lead. And why would I care?
Yeah.
I don't care about them.
I'm so with you on that.
So teen dramas do usually, I think when I was reading TV tropes, they have an entry in there that's like how to write. So you want to write a teen drama?
Yeah.
And they talk about you need to have, the group of friends. It needs to have, basically the same number of boys and girls. There's often modern ones, now you have the gay character, and then you go with racial diversity, at least one character that's racially diverse.
It should be more than one, but
But I mean, that's
pretty normal.
That's how it's been. But if only.
Well, that's why you need you need two non-white characters, so the single white character is not as blatantly tokenistic on the part of the usual white screenwriters.
Here's a mind-blowing idea. Why don't you have a person of color be the main character in your teen drama?
Yeah, and not have the whole teen drama be centered on that person's. You can do it on racial identity, but maybe just imagine stories that are just the same story.
Right, exactly. That just has a person of color, has a black female lead or a black male lead or Hispanic, Latino,
Absolutely.
somebody.
Yeah. The talk about representation is really important, I think, because I think once you go back and watch stuff like Buffy and you see kind of how it was, again, things that people were kind of uncomfortable with, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
But sex and drugs and or things that they can, or even how homosexuality was considered sensational. You couldn't show it on primetime television.
It was a very special episode.
It's only associated with sex when it's not associated with human relationships, which are, that is what it is. You can kind of see how that status quo is maintained throughout these shows, especially in the 90s, where it's all white people problems and not very even really good white people problems, just problems of being too rich and not having anything to do,
white folk, upper middle class white screenwriters living in the suburbs of Los Angeles problems. But that's the thing. I mean, you can get an entire series out of just talking about the role of how sex happens on the changing role of sex, because it's culturally informed in American teen dramas. Because I remember when there's a book about this, because it was writing about a book called Generation X, which I've referred to about. It came out originally. It was a parody,
ECH,
ECH, like the Mad Magazine X. Generation X. It came out in 94 as a deliberate kind of not just a piss take, but also a response. I think I have it here somewhere. A response and also as an accompanying tome like all of those like Fast Sofa or like when all the first wave of Gen X books really came out. Like here's this new here's this new generation that you can with
we're going to start giving generations labels.
Yeah,
and maybe really self-congratulatory about it.
Yeah, and also that you can target market. But one of the things they mentioned in the book about TV shows is that the difference between say 90210 and Melrose Place is that 90210 was high school set. Melrose Place was with graduates or people who weren't teenagers, which means that anytime any realistic teenager, whenever they got to fucking on 90210, it was a big problem. Whereas with Melrose Place, because they weren't teenagers. They could fuck, and you did not need to have like extra, very special episodes about like abortion or birth control or anything like that.
Exactly.
Screw it. Similarly with like Buffy, you had, which took a lot, had the benefit of like the genre metaphor, where she could go because she went from high school, all of a sudden she was no longer a minor anymore, which means like I said, they had the entire episode with her and her like a blonde meathead friend, where like due to like a spell or something, they were effectively like captured because they were just like in her dorm wall, just 24/7 all day. And
they got taken over by some like what is it called, sex pollen? Like that's a trope. You can have like the insatiable need to have sex like constantly, and it's a really funny writing trope. Anyway, sorry.
So are you saying after Buffy, after she graduated from high school, then she could go out and have sex all the time?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's not just within the context of the text now, but it's also within the context of the actors' ages, which is even worse, I think, because like they did that on Game of Thrones. They waited until Sophie was old enough to have her be the subject of a sexual assault, and it's like, oh god,
Right.
Waiting for them to be old enough for that. Great.
Yeah, fuck you. I'm sorry.
Well, I have
strong feelings about that.
It's also the thing of like the actors showed off because of, it's almost like you get into like statutory reasons, like you can't have a minor character, a minor actor in a sexual situation because I don't know, but the fetishization of a camera like that, because that posits
the
them
of the camera.
that posits them as sexual being in an age range where that's not allowed.
Yes.
With check that is not allowed from the majority of the audience who is of majority age, who are the main the advertisers, the showrunners, the half the casting crew, with the exception of maybe part of the audience. And certainly all of the TV writers. Yeah. Because I think part of it is like we understated, and the piece that Matt Christman wrote about kind of like how the idea of prestige TV came out in an issue of Current Affairs within the last couple of months, how the idea of prestige TV, a lot of it is kind of hardened into, because the tropes have calcified into things that ape what they did on Sopranos or The Wire or even Deadwood, where now to be considered serious prestige TV, you need to have certain tropes where it needs to be like a very violent. You need to dress up your titillation.
There's got to be a lot of gratuitous sex, a lot of gratuitous violence,
right?
To
shock,
right? But it presented very po-faced, very serious, because you now have an entire, like the main way you advertise your show is because the internet. The internet destroys everything. The main way you advertise your show is through, because you have is through legions of like
fans,
not just fans, TV bloggers.
Oh, TV bloggers,
people who cover the stuff. Like you need to have like the AV Club will do like AV Club
They're
Vulture.
The real problem.
Yeah, well, you have the entire thing of like legions of podcasts that do episode by episodes, or like YouTube stuff, or even like people in print media writing serious print and online media now. It's like...
Yeah, like in Bad Decisions I did last year, I was listening to all of those Westworld podcasts. It wasn't worth it.
But it's a thing where at some point it can't just be entertainment. It has to be capital S, capital E, serious entertainment. Yeah. So you need to have a coherent theme, because it's like it's a thing where there's a feedback loop going where the showrunners are constructing the series to appeal to the TV journos and certain ways of how they write, rather than whether it feeds into the actual show or not.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think we should probably bridge into, unless there's any other shows you want to talk about, we should probably bridge into Riverdale at some point, because it's,
right now it's perfect.
Yeah. In terms of, like I said, I know Riverdale mainly through hot takes, and having finally finished the pilot earlier today, and it's at some point it's like, it's like, goddamn, I know it's a pilot, but man, is that thing really? It's like every aspect is so not fine-tuned, but it's more like over-amplified. It's so very arch. Like, you can't just have like witty Joss Whedon characters. They need to be it's like they need much like how Red Letter Media described the Star Trek reboot. It couldn't just be a good Star Trek movie. Everything had to be hypercharged. Like, you need, like, all the
90% more lens flare.
Yeah.
Because the whole opening sequence and how everybody is perfectly make-upped and like their hair is perfectly
but that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
That's the part of the visual thing with Riverdale, and I saw this with Grimm too. And what it looks like is essential to the core of what it is, because it's a comic book.
Yeah.
And Grimm was one of those, like, when I was a kid and you'd read the fairy tale books and you'd open them and there'd be all these like rich, dark, deep greens and reds, hues that were the images. I think Riverdale is like they're going the extra mile of making it look like a comic book, making, so like they didn't do that in 90210. They just made it look like everybody, everyday stuff. But
the model they were following was had different visual tropes, a different visual style.
Yeah. But in Riverdale, they imbue all of this rich imagery, like where you have like the people with the perfect skin and
it's
the bright
its own
red
universe
hair
of cartoon people.
Yeah.
It's sort of like living in Pleasantville.
But it brings in Luke Perry.
Yeah.
Which I love. I love it when you have people hop from universe to universe. And I know they had to have done that on purpose, because Luke Perry was in 90210 and now here he is in Riverdale. Madgen is, was in Twin Peaks. Now here she is in Riverdale. Mm-hmm. She was in an awesome witch one too that was freaking awesome.
Oh, I haven't.
Do we want to give a
Witches of East End?
Oh yeah.
Wait, that was a series, wasn't it?
Was that what? Was it
the movie?
Was it called the Witch? The Witches of Eastwick was the.
No, Witches of East End is a show.
Is a show.
I need to watch it.
Okay, Eastwick was in a film from '87, which I think George Miller directed from Mad Max, and I think, but East End was the was like
the TV series.
Was the series later. But do we want to give like a slug line pitch of? I mean, no one listening to this doesn't know what Riverdale is, but we want to give at least what the modern take of the series is.
Yeah, do you want to? Since you watched it this morning, why don't you talk about it?
No, I wanted to amplify female voices and do less work.
Well, I pretty much watched it, I think, drunk, but I
might have been stoned.
Yeah, it's usually one or the other or both.
So it starts off with so Archie is the main character, and Archie is a musician. Was he a musician in the comic books?
No.
So he's the sensitive musician.
Post Dawson's Creek Archie,
and Betty is his best friend. Like in the series, Betty is Archie's best friend, and
she's the one who's been friend zoned. Yeah,
which is really odd.
Oh, it's like a male power fantasy right there.
And there's been a murder in Riverdale.
She's dead. Wrapped in plastic.
Which is really jarring for everybody who like used to watch, read Archie comics, because they came from the grocery store and your mama let you buy them because it wasn't one of those scary, weird ones.
Yeah.
It was like, what? Riverdale starts off with a murder? But so it starts off with a murder. Some guy with orange hair has been murdered.
Wrapped in plastic.
Wrapped in plastic.
Well, basically, it's very Twin Peaksy.
Cherry and Jason Blossom, right?
Right. Okay. There's the Blossom family.
It's a Blossom family, and they're so perfect, and they look just like each other.
And extremely ginger, like weirdly, almost like ancestrally ginger.
Yeah, and then they have this like this really super pale skin, so they're like all of the colors in it are amplified. Like they've turned up the setting, like the Instagram filter.
Art direction is gorgeous.
Yeah, it is. It's on purpose.
The saturation, they just saturate. The saturation fill their plus 25% through Photoshop and like, yeah, let's run that a couple times.
It's like watching it on. It's like it's been put. The whole thing's been put through an Instagram filter.
Yeah.
But then Veronica is new in town, and right, that's her name.
Yes.
Betty and Veronica. Yeah. So Veronica is new in town, and Veronica's mom has just divorced Veronica's dad,
and they're super rich.
Well, they were super rich.
They were super rich.
And Veronica's mom grew up in Riverdale, and they're coming back to Riverdale.
Mm-hmm.
And Archie's dad is played by Luke Perry, which is just so awesome. And he's like, just kind of like a hard scrabble guy, like working man. He has a construction company.
Yeah.
And okay, so the plot is that they found the body and they're trying to solve the murder mystery. So basically, you've got Twin Peaks mixed with the Archie comic books.
Yep.
Turned up through an Instagram filter.
Right.
Yep. I love that analogy.
Yeah, I think it's in the casting. I think it was in the casting of like they were really tipping their hand of like, yeah, we want Twin Peaks in 90210 because hey, we are casting both Luke Perry as the main character's dad and Mad Chin Amick, thank you, as one of the main as the mother of the main character.
Is she Betty's
Skeet
mom?
Ulrich?
She's Betty's. Yeah.
Betty's mom.
Mom.
Yeah, and she's kind of mean, kind of bitchy.
Oh yeah.
Real bitchy.
Skeet Ulrich was in Scream, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Okay, so we have
that was a teen favorite of my age cohort was him because I mean
Saved by the Bell. Is that Saved by the Bell?
No.
No, later. Saved by the Bell would have been like even before I was a teenager. Skeet Ulrich was like the Scream films.
He was Scream films, but also
Screech is from Saved by the Bell.
Yes.
He was in something that was a teenage show. I'll just have to remember it later. Anyway.
More than likely, yes.
Yeah.
Actors get around, yeah.
Yeah, but I
think the other thing, but this what should be noted is that this series comes after the success, almost the rebirth, the rebirth, and also success of all the revisionist Archie comics of the last 5-6 years.
Yep.
Of like after you have where like Archie goes into hard horror, or like not only does he get a new gay best friend, but it goes into the future, and like what happens when like Archie is like one of his friends runs for president, and Archie gets shot protecting him.
Wait, are you saying that somebody wrote a whole bunch of Archie comics where all those things happen?
Yeah, their new syndication.
I had no idea.
As that's their new model. They bring in different artists and writers within and they can do whatever kind of genre take they want to do. So it's like Archie and zombies, or Archie and
I had no
science
idea.
fiction.
I have to look more into this.
But it's teenage characters. Well, like I said, it's taking genre tropes, these genre tropes of Archie comics, but
inserting them in these different realities
into like there are some that are full on like what happens if you teach if more like a serious like teenager thing. So it's Archie where you have Archie characters, but not in the like sterile like neutered art. Archie.
It's Archie alternative universe fan fiction, basically.
Right.
Is how I see it.
It's it's kind of like
because everybody knows the characters and you don't have to rewrite them.
Yeah.
There you go, and that's not that it's not all just deliberately like dark, where it's Archie, but he's dark and gritty. I think it's more of just they figured like let's just try something new, which technically is there's some dark and grittiness, like but you have where at one point where there's a zombie breakout in the Archie universe, but they also have Sabrina the Teenage Witch, who is a full on.
Oh, she's a character in that universe, right?
Yeah.
In Archie, Sabrina.
Yes. Sabrina characters are much more like a vertical horror comic book, where like all of her aunts really are like full on witch, like paganistic druidic ceremonies, naked ceremonies in the woods, witches, and like how she kind of. She's a 17-year-old with like this with a Patty Duke haircut, or I should say with like a Haley Mills haircut, like a mid-60s teenager haircut. In early 20th century, early 21st century America.
That's great.
So like you have, and there are several of these series that were really very successful. I think because of that, because hey, everybody loves reboots. Why the hell not? Taking existing IP and hypercharging it and sexing it up for a new generation. Yeah,
and then you have that pre-existing content that goes back way when, right? I mean, that's the appeal of the comic book franchises now. You can go back and you can see a comic of Wonder Woman that was made in the 40s, and that's different, right? So I think that is part of the appeal of these reboots and remakes, but you're also cherry picking like the cool parts of it too, I think. And I think that's what I liked about the Riverdale stuff, was it felt like it kind of it rests on the tropes that you're aware of, but it tries to subvert them in some ways.
I think sometimes the way it subverts and lampshades certain things, the way that it subverts them, at some point, like I said, this is only going off of the pilot, and the pilot is with enough caveats, kind of not the best indicator of a series.
Nope.
Or at least the pilot or the premiere, but everything is so sharply drawn and so arch, pun not intended, that of lampshading a lot of things. Like at some point, watching the pilot, there was a sense of like, okay, who is this for? Yeah, because because we talked, as you brought up in the beginning, like why do like non-teenagers watch teen drama?
Yeah.
And there is a shitload. It is there's of a material. I got a very palpable sense that the writers are deliberately constructing this for the modern, the show is, I think, was
the modern fan and the modern younger woman.
Yeah, not just that, but also immediately to the modern media landscape where you have this entire, this legion of TV writers writing about TV as if we are in the golden age of television, and this is a very serious thing. So they're shoveling bits on this on, and at some point it is taking aspects of like titillation into this thing where it's like not in titillation, but also the hypercharging. Now he can't just be Archie; he's got to be like Cut Archie, who's
sensitive musician.
Yeah, not
Cut Archie.
Yeah, Cut Archie, who is.
I believe he takes his shirt off very quickly.
Is he
fucking his music teacher. Also played
Archie would never do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that now. Yeah.
But
I blocked that out.
Yeah. And
I think I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but this is what I'm getting at from what you're saying, is that they're trying to layer on so much complexity in this show, because like not only does it have to be visually stunning and the characters have to be all complex, and it has to have all these things so that all of the media can immediately jump on it and have something to say.
Right.
Like one of the things I like about teen dramas is they basically are really they're start off really straightforward. And
they're simple.
They're not. They don't get crazy complex. And I joke with my son that I watch a lot of these with all the time, that like I have to have him with me, because if they take a turn down the supernatural or whatever, I don't know what's happening. I have to have him explain everything that's going on. But like when it's like Gilmore Girls or Gossip Girl or 90210, it's like the relationships make sense, what they're doing makes sense, everyone's not like conspiring, if they are, it's like a really important thing and they really draw it out for you. But I feel like the more modern ones, and now I'm like the old man yelling at the cloud, but I feel like the more modern ones, they just try to do everything all at once for everybody, to hit as many possible bloggers who can concentrate to comment on as possible.
You're right.
Like you were saying, who's it for? Like you should be able to watch it and go
all four quadrants, as it were. Yeah,
and something can be written like for a specific audience and still be appealing to a larger audience, but I don't think they know who their audience is.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's not so much. Yeah, I think the sophistication is kind of sophisticated is a good entry point because of the difference between being sophisticated versus being overly complex and Byzantine. And like just in with a lot of forced seriousness, it's because like you watch the pilot, they're setting up. Like I said, Jesus Christ, the number of like, wow, these guys watch the premiere of Twin Peaks again and again and again, because you can't just have like murder. You have the murder mystery of the popular high school teen who was, it turns out, was probably involved in a lot more nefarious things.
Yeah.
This is as you get new characters moving to town. But you also see like all of the treacherous white people shit that is going on, that all the adults have like their own little crisscross soap opera-y
Every small town in America has a seedy underbelly.
Yeah.
There is always corruption.
But even then, it was pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was pretty much, you could pretty much draw a line between all the characters and how they were affecting each other.
Exactly.
Rather than having, like, concurrent stories running on that hopefully you're crossing your fingers someday that they're all going to overlap. And if and if you don't get it, you have to have your 18-year-old son sit next to you explain what just happened.
Right, yeah. You need watching the show with, like I said, the modern experience of watching the show with the tablet open to a fan wiki.
That reminds me of watching True Detective season 2, where
never did.
Don't.
I bailed out. Yeah.
I haven't watched
Again, I'm a glutton for self punishment. But yeah, watching it and trying to translate what was happening to my significant other, who was like, I just don't even care anymore.
Yeah.
Within the second episode, and I was like, "Yep."
Sometimes they just
get
get so complex, and I think at least in some of the shows that I watch, they don't try to lie because they think that their audience are the I'm doing little bunny ears, like, simple teenagers, like straightforward teenagers. They don't need to make it really complex. And guess what? That's really good writing.
That is good writing.
Like, there's really good storytelling in a lot of these things because they don't have a whole bunch of layers of other stuff. They just tell a story. It's straightforward. It might be a story we've already heard. It's like you're talking about the retelling.
It's actually kind of nice because it's like comfortable, right?
They're all just stories. I think retold.
You have a perfect point there. It's the story that's being retold, but I think if you trust your audience to fill in the gaps and you don't have to come out and try to explain everything, I think that is a sign of good writing. When you don't require an explanation for every single thing or some kind of machination by other characters being responsible for it. And having those interpersonal relationships just be the most important part, that dialogue and that connection of different human beings.
I think you're right. I think the interpersonal part is really, really important because then when they introduce like demons or hunters or whatever, it has the chance to go off the rails. Like I've been watching Teen Wolf is the one that I'm just about ready to finish up.
Yeah.
And the first couple seasons were really straightforward because it was this kid who got bit by a werewolf who's trying to figure out what does this mean and how do I exist in my friend group and in my school with my mom or whatever. And then every once in a while there would be like a storyline. Oh, there would be a monster. Oh, I'm a werewolf now. I can take care of the monster and I can save the community from the monster.
Yeah, my newly outsider status now confers a boon onto me.
Exactly.
That can come into play in a clinch.
And now I can help people in a new way that I couldn't. I can help my family. I can help my friends. But then they seem to, so many of these, especially the supernatural ones, fall into this trap of having to like have a multi episode arc, and then the multi-episode arc becomes a season-long arc, and then it just becomes so confusing, and they're like fighting all these things. It's like just keep it simple. It's fine to be simple. It's
you can have a monster
fine.
of the week. You can do that. It's okay.
I love a monster of the week.
You don't have to make everything a big overarching nefarious master plan, right?
At some point, I think that's again, it becomes almost the insecurity of the showrunners that they can't, it can't just be like they have to justify, like we were doing capital S, we're doing seriousness here, serious adult mature work, but the only way that they know how to do that is because is through the most like third-rate, second-rate, third-hand received wisdom of like the most tangible aspects to all this stuff. Like the show needs to be hyper complicated because hey, it's like adults can, like all of these, like Tolstoy novels, all of these, 19th century novels, they can handle like all of these multiple characters doing multiple threads and whatnot. So we need, that's a sign, that's serious literature. We need, we need to somehow graft that aspect onto our show without even examining whether that, is appropriate or can fit or even is even doable.
Yeah. Because it's not like War and Peace is light reading, you know?
It's weighty. It's po-faced. It's fetishizing complication without being able to, without knowing why you want that. You would want to have a multi-threaded
it doesn't
plot line.
Usually have a moral or ideological interesting thing to say, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to use my classics degree here,
Go for it.
I'm not going to use it well, so don't ask me too many questions. But it kind of goes back to, I was thinking about Aristotle earlier, because we were talking about whether or not your story is plot-driven or character-driven. Yeah. But what I see these stories do that bring in the big, the multi-series arc or whatever, it's the Deus Ex Machina.
Oh, yeah, always.
That's always what it is. And it's like, so, in Aristotle, he's like, that's the worst way to end.
That's bad writing, guys.
That's the worst way to end a play is by bringing in the god from the sky down from the machine. Deus Ex Machina is the god on the machine.
Exactly.
It's like you lower the guy from the rafters and he solves all of the problems. But he's like an outsider who comes in to create or solve problems. And that's kind of like what these supernatural shows do that create these long arcs, because they aren't relying on just the characters on the stage to be the interesting thing that keeps us watching it. They're bringing in a Deus Ex Machina to
distract a little bit,
to distract,
to elevate the text
and make us feel like, oh, that's how it's gonna it's gonna end. But like, no, we want to know how the characters would end it, not how the outside having it end up in a big battle with the fight. We want to know how the characters are gonna end
but that's harder. That's hard work, and better to rely on the crutch.
Mm-hmm. The very easy tropes, right? And that's the problem of having a series that goes on too long. If you don't limit a series without having that editor, you're
Supernatural. We're talking to you, Supernatural.
And Supernatural is interesting too, because it really is one of those shows that's written directly for the fan base that it has, and has no designs to get more fans. It just wants to write for the people that are watching it, and to the point where it's metatextual in a lot of parts.
Forever.
Yeah.
It wants to write forever.
Yeah. And then cool, if you've got that going for you, that's nice. But I prefer story driven and character driven, like action and stuff. And two, when you get, like, some shows kind of laud themselves as having kind of an interesting story to tell, but typically they diverge into stories that you just don't really want to be part of, right? I mean, I think that's the problem with, like, having that long form. Like, Buffy did it a lot, where they went into places in the story where you're like, I'm not even interested in this.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of a 7 episode
arc about,
like, damn it, I'm 3 episodes into it. I didn't even notice it was happening, and now
can I skip ahead to the end?
Yeah, exactly.
Can I just read can I just go on IMDb and read the synopsises and the reviews of this and just get it done and over with? Because it's...
And we do.
Yeah, we do.
We read the Wikipedia entry to go, okay, yeah, I got it. I got what I need.
So Teen Wolf is an interesting film. I've never actually seen any of it, but I've read a lot about it.
Okay.
So can you tell me one thing? Does he actually turn into a wolf?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like a real wolf, like not CGI wolf?
No, I mean he gets makeup and gets into his werewolf form.
Oh, werewolf form. Okay.
Yeah,
he doesn't practical
effects.
Yeah, there is one character who will completely turn into the animal. Like she was a were-coyote.
Oh, nice.
And because she was born, I think it's because she was like born of supernatural creatures. Mm-hmm. She actually takes on the form of the animal. But since he was bit by a werewolf and he just turns into a human, he turns into a werewolf. But yeah, I was really surprised to find that I really enjoyed Teen Wolf.
Yeah,
it was a lot better than I thought it would be. Partly because it has some really interesting characters. Their character, who's the straight man, is great. He's called Styles.
Styles. Yeah, I've read a lot about Styles.
He's awesome. You just root for him. You just want him to do well. You laugh at him. The actor's really good.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of videos.
And like if teenagers, like they're generally like really good, and they're just trying to figure out life. Like I raised 3 teenagers.
Yeah.
And teenagers are, for the most part, they're just trying to figure out life, and they're trying to figure out all the shit that's coming at them all the time while managing hormornes and learning how to have jobs and learning how to get their homework done.
We don't appreciate that.
Yeah, no,
we forget
exactly.
How horrible it was.
And these dramas, I think the best ones, at least in the beginning, first few seasons before they all get too old and then go off to college, I think the best dramas do a really good job of just accepting and observing what it's like to be a teenager.
Yeah.
Awesome. And on that note, we'll take a quick break and be back with recommendations. We had a request to go into shipping, so let us talk about fan shipping, as it were, of the character of the characters in these shows. So, Natasha, I'll let you take the wheel on this one.
Yeah, we can keep it really brief.
Whatever you like.
And for the audience that's listening, I'm sorry I'm talking about shipping culture, but I spend a lot of time on Tumblr, so I'm very well aware of it, and I'm also kind of participatory a little bit in it, but not too much. Kind of. But if you follow enough fan artists, they're always drawing pictures of couples that don't exist. So,
and shipping is when, like, in the context, shipping is when you imagine people are a couple, whether or not they're actually a couple in the show, or whether or not they just are two people that you think would be go good together. But then also, like, the whole fan culture around shipping is as I understand it, I don't spend a ton of time on Tumblr, but people, like you said, create lots of art, tell stories where they actually try to bring to light their what they imagine a couple might be like.
It's all about imagining what the future of that relationship might be. It's also a little bit about speculating what the writers are actually working on, because now that we have a lot more engagement with those writers and the actors that play them, you'll see a lot more of that kind of stuff bubbling up into that. Because I mean, who's going to the cons and getting paying $60 to get a signature from Ian or whoever, actor, whatever. It's usually the people that are heavily involved within the fandom that are participating in that kind of activity. But it can get a little hairy because a lot of people get very emotionally invested in it.
Okay.
And if something doesn't happen, or if something does happen, because a lot of it's around representation too, right? The transformative aspect of it. I mean, people want to see different relationships and different kind of characters and that represent themselves more. I mean, there was a huge foobar when, not foobar, a real big Tumblr discourse around the fact that Jughead wasn't asexual in Riverdale. Like, he has a relationship with Betty, right? So, and for some people were like, but he's never been interested in anybody,
Yeah.
He thinks food.
He just loves food. I mean, so yeah, anyway, there's a lot of stuff that can come out of that. That's a little bit weird, Tumblr discourse wise. It's horrible. But, I think shipping has its benefits though too.
It's kind of fun. So who are some of your favorite characters or couples, people to ship in teen dramas?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know. I am really a fan of...
I guess what teen dramas are you into most right now?
Oh, gosh. Well, I just started watching Riverdale, and I'm about 3 episodes in. But I do know that I'm going to... I think Jughead's hot.
Yeah.
Totally. That actor is just adorable. And he actually... I like him, too, because he's kind of playing the journalist, investigator type. And that's kind of like a film noir thing that I have a penchant for.
Okay.
Jughead as teenager, as narrator, as narrator blogger.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that was pretty perfect. Once I figured that out, what was going on, I was like, oh, he's writing about all this.
Yeah. Skins, so give you some context, most of the actors that came out of Skins are actually in stuff. So you have the kind of nerdy couple in Skins in the first season. When Nicholas Hoult was the main character in that, he became Beast in the new X-Men. He's in a lot of other stuff. But
he was also the crazy sidekick character in Mad Max Fury Road.
Oh.
Yep. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay. His best friend on the show, Sam, is kind of this really, really sad character. He's kind of a nerd, and he and Cassie, who is the girl that has an eating disorder and is she plays Gilly in Game of Thrones now.
Oh, okay.
So she's that actress. She's really, really good. They have this really kind of unique relationship where they're both outcasts, and they both kind of come together, and they have to he's in love with a girl that's out of his league, his best friend's girlfriend. So anyway, long story short, that's one of my favorite couples of all time in teenage drama. What about yours?
Let's see. Oh, there are so many. One on Gossip Girl, it's definitely Chuck and what's her name? Blair. Chuck and Blair are freaking awesome. I was like, so Chuck on Gossip Girl at the beginning was the biggest dirtbag ever. Like, you just hated him. And he's one of those characters. They did such a great job with his arc where they painted him just full of nuance. So by the time the series was over, even though he was like the most deplorable person at the beginning, like, you're totally rooting for him at the end. So I love Chuck and Blair. In Gilmore Girls, you always have to ask people if they're team
there's a love triangle
team
there.
Dean, team Jess, or team what was the last guy, Logan. I'm the vast minority of people who's Team Dean.
Yeah.
Because I always like the boyfriends who are simple and less complex, and Dean was pretty straightforward. Vampire Diaries. I can't stand Damon as a boyfriend. He's a terrible boyfriend for Elena, and I was so bummed.
I can't stand him as a person.
Yeah, he just like when she was together with Stefan, like Stefan was just like, I don't know. They
kept making him do like worse and worse, like unrealistic stuff.
Well,
like,
and Elena was her own person.
Yeah,
like Elena when she was with Stefan was her own person, and
she
then
wasn't being stalked and like told what to do.
And then she just became Damon's girlfriend.
Yeah,
and it was just like I didn't like that transformation.
Yeah, Vampire Diaries is weird for me because I just like Caroline and Bonnie, and I think that they both got like stepped on by the writers at every single point.
I really like Caroline and Bonnie, and at the beginning I didn't really like Bonnie. I didn't like her character very much. My son and I, who watched it together, we would just be like, oh, it's a Bonnie scene. But then she got more agency. Like she became more in control, and she had her own story. And I really liked it when she got together with what's his name, Enzo. I like their whole romance. Let's see. Oh, how about 90210? Who's everybody's favorite characters in a couple in 90210? Are you who do you like with Dylan best?
The blonde or the brunette?
Kelly?
Well, I mean, being born a blonde, I feel like I have to root for my side. But no, I mean, I never actually watched it. So.
Donna and David were actually the best couple. That was the Tori Spelling character.
Oh, nice. Okay. Did they have an actual relationship or?
You mean like in real life?
No. I mean the show. Like,
yes,
does it seem like
no. They have a very special episode, I think, where somebody loses their virginity. I can't remember which one of them, or maybe they lose it together. But they're definitely like because Donna was a virgin for a super long time.
I'm flashing. God, I think I remember hearing about that. It was like 1982 or something.
Oh yeah, and her boyfriend. But they were together for a really long. They might have even been together for the run of the show.
Yeah,
for most of the run of the show.
The couple in the background that stakes through everything.
Yeah, and like in Charmed, Piper and her husband, they get married. There's usually
Didn't he end up like dying? Don't they always die?
Everybody always dies a few times.
Yeah, I mean that's just natural,
don't they?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a soap opera if somebody wasn't dead and then came back from the dead.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of good couples out there.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to bring it up as a topic. I just think it's kind of interesting because I feel like that seems to like become like the main conversation in Tumblr fandom, at least, which is kind of ridiculous because there's so many more aspects to the show.
Yeah, but I do know people talk about it. They have very strong feelings. It's like with Gilmore Girls, that was always a big deal. Like, people like mostly it was fighting over whether Jess or Logan was better. Mm-hmm. Or is that his name? Logan? I think that's what his name is, Logan. And then when they brought back the revival, like that aspect of it is sort of. In some ways it's resolved, but not really. I don't want to give that one away because that's kind of a big spoiler. But the best part about the Gilmore Girls revival is that Dean turns out to be the best dude of all of them, and she never married him. Like the guy that she treated like dirt, he turns out to be the best and the most handsome because he's played by what's his nose.
Yeah, I think that's
Supernatural.
That is actually a pretty good rounding arc for that, right?
Yeah, it's like the very end of the last episode. You're like, when are we gonna see what happened to Dean? When are we gonna see? And you see what happened to Dean, and you're like, that is awesome.
Yeah,
because he's just like a great guy.
The closure
is
just
good. Straight up,
we were
proven
dude. Right. Yeah,
runs into him in the grocery store. He turns out he's happily married. He has 3 kids. He's super handsome, and she's just like Rory's life has gone completely off the rails.
What did I leave
you're like,
behind?
Yeah. That's what you get for leaving Dean.
Yeah, I like that. A little bit of punishment. Yeah, I think that. Oh, I'm sorry. Lost my train of thought.
Jeremy, do you have any favorite couples on teen dramas?
My question. Yes, Jeremy, do you have a favorite couple of a teen drama?
No.
Okay.
Nope. Fair enough.
I was like, this thing is like my TV watching is so curtailed by unless I can torrent shotgun a season on a second monitor while I am like playing Persona or something on the primary screen.
I used to be able to multitask like that. I find I can't do that anymore, and it makes me super sad. I used to be able to like do multiple things while I was watching TV, but like I don't know if it's TV's gotten that much more complex or my brain
it's gotten more complex.
Fried.
I can't watch it like that either.
It definitely does that, but I think it's also whether how much attention you have to pay visually versus auditory.
Yeah.
If it's just auditory, because I mean I have hell, I listen to, I have earbuds in my head 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
If it's auditory, then that's fun. Then that's how I tend to do it, because I remember trying to like watch an episode of Touch of Cloth, which was Charlie Brooker's kind of like piss take of a tortured detective. He's a police detective, but he's got his own demons, but in the style of Zucker Abrams Zucker. So it's like an airplane film. But which means that there are so many visual jokes you have to pay attention. Yeah. You have to pay attention at all times.
Oh, that's
and if you have if you're trying to shit, I'm trying to play Wolfenstein on this other monitor. I can't do this.
I can't be looking at your sight gags.
Yeah. So it's. But it's I mean the thing is I barely watch what TV have we watched? God, I feel like a handful of Netflix series, I've guessed, because most of the times like I don't spend much time. Consume my media is more like film and comics and in nonfiction and video games. So it's.
I'm a sucker for a good love story.
Right.
Same, absolutely. Especially if they can pull it off on TV, which is really hard. It feels like.
Right. Yeah. Or at least, given all of the modern constraints of what an episodic series has to be nowadays.
Yeah.
But, do we want to transition to endorsements or recommendations, or
that works for me? Yeah. It's been fun to do this as long as we have.
Yeah,
the whole episode is fraught with endorsements.
Yeah, we got like two. Yeah, I would say we got at least 2 hours of tape down. Not to mention everything else.
I want my check. Today. ABC or CW or whatever.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, so they
should be paying us for this.
We're think fluencers. Where's our cut?
We have to put it on a blog.
Yeah, we need a YouTube channel.
I was thinking about there's probably for Gilmore Girls. I bet you unlimited amount of money that on Tumblr there's some 10,000 word essay on why one guy is better than her than the other.
Oh yeah. I'm sure of it.
Somebody's put a lot of thought.
There's
into
probably
that.
multiple.
Yeah.
Many of those.
It's whatever. Yeah, it's whatever the rule 34 for shipping is. So it's,
there is a rule 34 for discourse, just as there is for porn.
Right. Well, yeah. I think it's called Godwin's Law. But, all right, recommendations. Is there any particular thing you want to recommend or endorse or suggest other people need to check out?
I found a couple of awesome new podcasts the last couple of weeks. One of them is called I Was There Too.
Yes, Matt Gorley's show.
Okay, have you heard of that one? So it's about they talk to people who were present during the filming of something, and they kind of tell their stories.
Oh, cool.
So one I listened to was a guy who was among other things, he was on Rebel Without a Cause.
Oh, wow.
And so it's the his stories about what happened on set. So he's got stories about James Dean and about all those other guys, but it's from his perspective. And sometimes they'll talk about an editor for a thing or somebody who just worked on set. They're really fascinating backstories.
That's awesome.
I don't know if they're the ones I've listened to are all Hollywood. I don't know if they're all movies or not. Do you know, Jeremy?
The vast majority of them are, because I think the series started.
There too.
Yeah, the series started just because Matt Gorley, he's a member of Super Ego, the sketch comedy group. He shows up on a lot of Comedy Bang Bang /Earwolf podcasts.
He does a really good job. Mm-hmm. He does a really good job. And then the other one that I'm listening to is called What Trump Can Teach Us About Constitutional Law.
Oh yeah.
Have you heard of that one? That's by Roman Mars.
Yeah,
Roman Mars, who does 99% Invisible, is started this podcast because he's so stressed out by the Trump presidency that this is his way of trying to give back. And so he talks to a friend of his who's a constitutional law professor, and they go through his tweets, and she explains what jurisdiction he actually has over the things that Trump says that he can do. And she's like, well, it depends.
Yeah, that's great.
It's really good.
Cool.
I like it. Is it my turn? Oh, okay. Well, I'm kind of going to be boring this week. Musical recommendation, Chastity Belt. Northwest favorites from Walla Walla, but was out of Seattle. But I think they recorded their last album in Portland. just had their album I Used to Spend So Much Time Alone come out, and their 4-piece, all-female, very sort of almost out of the grunge kind of Slater-Kenny kind of Northwest kind of girl, but not. It's very, very kind of dark and funny music. I like it a lot. And very chill, so you can just put it on the background, and then you find out the song's called "Cool Slut," and it's like, yeah, it's a neat song. But yeah, I recommend their new album. It's a lot darker than their previous work, but it's also good. And then I finally finished all of the Mystery Science Theater 3000 reboot on Netflix.
I still need to do that.
And yeah,
I've heard that's good.
So one of the episodes called the Christmas That Almost Wasn't. And have you seen that or heard of it?
I've only heard of it.
That is a lesson in psychological torture. That is like the episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000 where I almost like burned the TV down because it was so bad, and I was like, why am I even participating in it? But the guys on that show, Jonah, they've got Patton Oswalt, they've got Felicia Day, they have cameos from some of the most amazing people. I won't spoil it for you, but there's a couple cameos that are really cute.
So do they talk about it while they're watching these old movies?
Yeah, have you ever watched the original MST3K?
No.
Okay, so to give you some context, it was a show that came out, it used to be a local show in like Minnesota, and then it went syndicated and like it was on Fox when I was growing up. I was like 11 or 12 when it was being played at like midnight. And it's just a full movie it's not just a full movie of, they cut down some parts, but they take a bad movie, and then they've also kind of sandwich it in between these little gags with puppets.
Okay.
And the puppets are the ones that are doing part of the commentary, but they're really just comedians behind it.
Marty, don't argue with me. Get your ass up here, damn it.
He's trying to return a pizza.
Well, something is going on.
It's supposed to be hot, sir.
All right. This morning, some snot-nosed reporters started asking about Maybrook and the clearance of the land, and I don't like it.
You know your phone isn't even plugged in.
Well, it could mean a lot.
Way to win her back, Duke Yellington.
I want you to get on that plane with the file and be up here by tomorrow night. God, it's hard to come down from that guy. And don't give me that I don't approve look.
No. I don't approve or disapprove. David, you like weather. You just happy.
You like school in summertime.
I came to collect that lunch.
Oh, my God, lunch. I forgot.
That was 2 months ago. You must be starving.
And they have a whole their writing group is like 20 people in a room watching a bad movie and all just saying stupid shit and writing it down. And then they recreate that to do that. But they had a lot of talent. Like Joel, the guy that did the first iterations of it. Like I saw him at Dragon Con, and he was talking about the show and about how he was like really into ventriloquist dummies when he was a kid. Like he wanted to be a ventriloquist.
She's holding up her hands, pretending to do ventriloquism. She threw her voice.
He had a PowerPoint at his presentation where he had these pictures of creepy like ventriloquist dummies. Anyway, but he made all the robots from hand, and they have taken on the life of their own, their characters, and they have their own personalities. And though they're played by different people now, because like Bill Corbett was one of them, and then what the other guy?
Trace Bolu, Bill Corbett, Kevin Murphy.
Yeah.
And also J. Elvis Weinstein, who was the very first Tom Servo that I got to meet when he and Trace Bolo and Frank Conniff, who were original cast members, came to Portland along with Dana Gould to do a live riff on Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Oh, nice. Yeah, they did riff tracks between like a couple of those dudes did, and they were playing them. But I really find MST3K, and if you kind of play into the sensibilities of it, like the puppets and the little models that they make, it really that is the magic for me. And then they have, of course, just the most hilarious jokes that only make sense if you watch it, obviously. So I will not go into those, but it was really worth it. I think my favorite was probably the one that made me laugh the most was the Avalanche movie thing. Oh God.
Co-starring Rock Hudson and Mia Farrow.
Yep. Yeah.
That sounds great.
It is. It's beautiful.
I brought enough cheekbones for every one of us.
It's terrific to see you.
Even in that color palette.
The two of you together.
And I'm not forgetting you, Danny, from the last movie.
Hello, dear.
How are you, McDade? Mother, you and McDade have a full schedule. There's an awful lot to see around here.
Can't we sit together a while and have a drink and talk?
I would like to have some time with Caroline.
He plays my son, but we're the same age.
Come on, McDade.
You loser.
Thanks for the tour.
How could this scene get any more awkward? Belching?
Hi.
You're looking so good.
You got that emaciated look, and you know how opposites attract.
Some weird. It's some weird mid-70s like
disaster film, but it's like the
C-grade disaster film. Yeah.
Very C-grade.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to watch that.
It's great.
Yeah, that's a good, because everyone's always talking about Mystery Science Theater, but I've never really known exactly what it was. So thank you for the explanation.
Yeah,
Mystery Science Theater is one of my foundational of the many bits of culture that fed into me being me.
That's one of them. That's one of your building blocks.
MST3K, along with, because it's kind of like there's always like, for the up until I don't know what undergrad, there was a thing, certain things on certain stages kind of like fed into me being it's like starts off with like Weird Al, and then gets into say X-Men comics and The Simpsons. But then once I discovered MST3K, that was the godhead of the most like smart-assed but hyper literate, like anti-authoritarian just shows. And this thing was always on Comedy Central forever, which I did not have access to until I moved to Ann Arbor. And I remember in like 1994 when it was still the original was still in the air on cable. Like I would get cases of blank VHS tapes for Christmas because I was taping everything so much. I would like tape full. You could get 2 or 3 episodes of MST3K onto a single VHS tape and tape trading and whatnot.
I have boxes full of old VHS tapes that are those Simpsons, Seinfeld, Star Trek Thursday nights.
Nice.
And they're interspersed with Bill Clinton for president.
Oh, even better. It's
different political commercials that are awesome.
And looking back now, it is more so than the shows that there was on. The commercials are the ones that need to be archived.
Exactly.
And I still somewhere I still have a tape of like all the tapes that I would do of stuff I recorded off of MTV. Like in like 1991 or 1992, and I was like, I'd kill for those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's it for me for recommendations. So.
Okay, cool. I have 3. First thing was connecting to our topic was the collected Jughead Volume 1. Done by Chip Zdarsky and Erica Henderson. This is the one that actually made the fact that like Jughead was effectively asexual, like canon.
Yep.
And it is it's kind of like it's both like hilarious, but also there's a bit of more of a seriousness about the characters. And at one point it starts going into, because it's a comic, like it goes in, and Jughead reads a lot of comics, it goes into his own like kind of like weird fever dreams of like him injecting himself into various like Jughead in a pirate scenario, that kind of thing. And like I said, it's Chip Zdarsky, who's like one of the best writers out there.
Yeah, he's a great comics writer right now.
Yeah, like working on a lot of like some of the best series, and he's hilarious. And Erica Henderson, her art complements him well. Second book is published in June of 2017 this year, put out by Zero Books, which is actually a local imprint. But the author's name is Angela Nagle. The book is called Kill All Normies. It is her take on kind of tracking the evolution of like how what is now called like the alt-right or the anime Nazis, how they kind of they started as a bunch of like, I don't know, transgressive like kids on like 4chan or something, but how they kind of the weird like kind of like shitposting nihilism eventually somehow through time and getting attacked by a lot of the worst aspects of politics on Tumblr, kind of like went reactionary, and how that kind of formed into, and that met up with a bunch of like a lot of like red pill men's rights activists and pickup artist types, and like this, and then Gamergate happened, and that then Gamergate happened, and it's kind of like it's her evolution, discussing this stuff, but also deconstructing these various online cultures, because the problem is that, especially this really showed up in the last election. You had a lot of like online communities doing like online shit that was really like affecting the real world, but all of the journalists who were covering this, again, because of we're all like upper middle class professionals from the Northeast, had no idea what the hell any of this stuff was or how it worked.
They couldn't deal with it.
Yeah, and to the point where they even still can't. Where there was no knowledge. They didn't grow up online. They had no exposure to like Tumblr or message board culture, and so even now. now, like they have no idea how to even evaluate a movement as a threat or as an annoyance or whatever.
Yeah.
Her book goes into that, and it also goes into some of the aspects about one of the because I think she's also written a lot about how due to and this connects to a lot. It's almost a follow-up book to Mark Fisher's Exiting the Vampire Castle and all of his other book called Capitalist Realism, which gets into the worst aspects of how online culture seeps away from like political organizing.
How it loses its ideology and becomes a system of calling out people for things and trying to correct versus actually present any kind of form of
something better.
Anything better.
And so that's Angela Nagle's Kill All Normies, which connects up to my other recommendation that this came out earlier, done by Phoebe Maltz Bovy, last name Bovy, called The Perils of Privilege in quotes, or Why Injustice Can't Be Solved by Accusing Others of Advantage, put out by St. Martin's Press. It was published in March of this year. As she said in interviews, like had she finished her book like after the election last year, it would be a very, very different book.
Yeah,
it's like she kind of completed it. She was completing the edits, I think, in like July of last year. Whereas like a lot of the stuff that she was writing about was like coming to the fore. But it gets into like privilege and call out culture, or the massive weapon that is the accusation of cultural appropriation. Mm-hmm. But how you have useful ideas, or at least ideas that can lead to better circumstances, but due to how online culture is, are like the most absolute, wielded in the most damaging and self-defeating ways.
Yeah, I love that you have a chapter called Your Problematic Fave, because that just kind of summarizes Tumblr in a nutshell.
Whereas, and it gets into why just, not only just talking, having people check their privilege becomes like almost like this weird like purity motive, mm-hmm. where nothing is actually changed. It's only it reaffirms people's status and like centers them as like everything else must revolve around what they do.
Virtue signaling is what they call it. It's basically saying that I am more woke than you, and I am going to correct you so that you can be as good as I am. And which becomes, sort of a almost quasi-religious belief system versus actually having any kind of intellectual or factual basis, well, at least in terms, it does have some good bases. It just means they're twisted into a kind of, you don't actually have, you're not getting anything accomplished. You're not actively trying to help the other person. You get into this system where you're just trying to berate other people for their ideas. Right. It is. There's no aspect to. I think Doug Lane, the publisher, has written about this kind of stuff. The publisher of Zero Books writes about it as. Trying to achieve social justice only on an exercise bicycle.
That sounds interesting. I'm not quite sure I agree with the premise, so I have to read it.
But it's kind of a thing of like but it's almost a thing of like separate from the concepts that it talks about. It gets into the absolute the worst ways that they are. It's useful concept as cudgel. Rather than where at some point where the way that these what would otherwise be extremely informative ideas are the worst aspects of them are because they at some point it becomes like they become they're thrilling. There's a sense of righteousness there, mm-hmm. of like you're able hey, you're proven right because it's but the problem is that nothing is changed. It just becomes about winning arguments online rather than trying to reorganize, to restructure society so that to actually help people.
So instead of I like how you put it where you said it's not about winning arguments online. Yeah. So like I was in a situation yesterday where someone made over the top a privileged comment about something, and I was just like, how do I even respond to this? Yeah, because like he should know that what he just said, like, is like, I didn't say anything about it because I was like, what can I do? But I super wanted to. But what I ended up doing was investigating my own, trying to learn a bit more about myself. Like, why did that bother me so much? What is it about what was said do I want to call out? And what can I help? How can I help that thing rather than just like, because I didn't want to do it because it was online and I didn't want to say anything because I was like, I don't want to just start a whole shitstorm here. So I ended up just like reflecting on what it was that he said and like how in the future in my dealings I can try to get this across to him that like what he had said was a result of layers of privilege.
Right, but it gets into that there are better and worse. It's the same way of that persuasion is a necessary thing that gets has gotten lost into it. Where how you even if people saying, like I said, just ostentatious, like clueless things, the way at some point how do you coach them to be, and like the idea of coaching goes to be better. Do you is it public open berating them, which it reinforces personal righteousness and feels really, really good to beat down. But not only does you make them feel like shit, you also generate resentment, and it's like nothing comes of it. Nothing has changed. At some point, even they're commenting about some horrible thing, but even just hyper focusing on the most superficial of privilege awareness.
Yeah.
At some point, can calcify into only focusing to one point into nothing but navel gazing.
Right.
Yeah.
But then there's all these people of color who've been waiting for us to speak up on their behalf because for so long they've been doing it themselves. They're the only ones who've been pointing out privilege, and they're just like, join us, like help us point this out to your peers. Your peers listen to you. Yeah. Nobody's listening to us. They think I'm just like, the example of like the angry white woman, like, help me out because I'm tired of this fight. They're all their lives. They're the ones who've been expected to point all of this stuff out. So it's an interesting push and pull between like, when do we, step in and point things out, or are we just doing it so we can say that we were right?
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody, like I said, it's taking ideas that, like I said, that could be valid ideas or concepts, but using, in a culture that weaponizes them, that use their only culture is just to beat the shit out of each other and to kind of. And
further polarizing people from meeting anywhere, because there's a lot of ego defense that's wrapped into that. We saw that with our last election, and sort of the fact that the alt-right kind of took over those identity politics but made them for white people, which was ridiculous, absolutely fucking dumb. But the basis for their argumentation came from
they were able to do it because
from
of this.
liberal identity politics.
Right, and it's almost the thing. It's because of the. It's like the language of criticism online is... God, this is a whole other podcast.
Yeah, sorry. We got really in the weeds.
I know, we really did.
Anyway,
we got to go watch some teen dramas.
Yeah. But suffice to say, my 3 books, Jughead, the collected comic put out last year, Angela Nagle's, she actually writes about the kind of the same thing of like how a lot of progressive or lefty or liberal folk do their politics online, ultimately is far more atomizing. It's kind of like it separates people. It's kind of like it's we
don't have the community organization and it's become like all this like, are you leftist enough, or are you you woke enough or whatever.
It exacerbates difference rather than realizing that then collective action and solidarity are far more effective things. But that's another thing. And then the last book is, Phoebe Maltz Bovy's The Perils of Privilege, put up by St. Martin's. It's good. I have the only copy of that the library has, so good luck finding it. But it's definitely recommend those. Yeah, you already went in.
I did.
You did, yeah. You did podcast and you. All right. And I guess, okay, so where can folks find you online? Should you give out the information or anything else that you are working on that you want to promote?
You can find me on Twitter at TCBBiggs, be prepared for a barrage of Portland Trailblazers related information.
It wasn't too barragey. Maybe I just follow enough people, but
you probably have it mixed up with everything else. But yeah, and I also write and do podcasts for BlazersEdge.com, which is about the Portland Trailblazers, and I talk a lot about basketball.
Sorry.
Rip City.
Rip City. Yeah. I am Ashes for Foxes on Twitter and Tumblr, and you can find me there. And I'm also my fun blog is cyborgharpy.tumblr.com. I recommend that one better than the serious one.
And as always, we are at just Giving the Mic, MIC on Giving the Mic at Gmail, Giving the Mic on Twitter, facebooks.com/givingthemic. And there's even, at some point, I'm trying to put these episodes up on YouTube, too, because why not?
YouTube's a big medium.
Yeah, there's that. All right, and thank everyone here for helping me out and spending a heat wave Sunday in an unair-conditioned basement apartment in Portland, Oregon. I want to thank you all for listening. Hopefully these will be out. These episodes will be out sometime soon, but we'll find out. And for lack of anything else, you have anything last things you want to say?
Stay sexy, don't get murdered.
Ooh, that's good advice. Rip City, baby.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Editing services provided by Entertainment Unlimited. Visit us at euavp.com.
She's dead. Wrapped in plastic.